Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Squat Cobbler. I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on Everything, and joining me, as always,
Hi, everybody. This is Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram. Please be sure to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, leave us a comment, give us suggestions for other shows, favorite recipes, whatever else you like. So,
well, today we are here to talk about a recent announcement that I know has some people upset. Although it does seem like, as upset as they are, they're not entirely surprised. The latest iteration of Intellivision looks like it's been delayed again. Now, was this a system that's been on your radar and something you've been interested in, Kelly?
it was not until you brought it up as a topic for a show. And then I started to do a little bit of digging as I started to see what they're planning to come out with, maybe ever eventually. I started to get a lot more interested because this looks pretty sweet. This looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm really torn on it from the get go because the form factor of it, I think it looks great. Like I think design wise, and this is something that we talked about with the Atari VCS. Like it looks cool. This is another one of those things. The form factor I think looks really cool. They have a few different designs options that you can get. It has LED lights and things on it. Looks really cool. Game wise is where I'm not really sold so far. Just like the Atari VCS.
Yeah, and so and this comes to one, it's not available, and the date keeps being pushed.
Yeah.
And then we so I don't know if we mentioned this is uh, the Amico is the branding for it. I don't know if we mentioned it's the Amico system we're talking about. And I watched like the E3 presentation on it. And so maybe that presentation was more optimistic on what games they were going to have available and all that. But actually, by kind of watching that, I actually got intrigued. I was mostly intrigued by the controllers, the fact that you're getting. First of all, they have just slathered everything in LEDs. Any place they could put an LED on this, whether it's the main game box or the controllers, and they sync with the games. They kind of give you clues on what's going on in gameplay potentially. So all that's really cool. But it comes with a kind of a dial side, which serves as some of your joystick and directional from there, and then a touch screen as well, which is also a color display, which is pretty amazing. And just the combinations of what you can do with that with gameplay looked pretty good. So, but then when they were showing, and what I saw in the E3 thing was them taking, we talked to Atari and we're reimagining a bunch of their titles. So they showed, if you took Missile Command, I'm sorry, brain cramp. If you took Missile Command and amped it up to kind of be cooler graphics, they showed an example of what that would be like. And obviously, instead of a trackball, you'd be using that circular control thing. It looks sweet. Version of Berserk looked pretty cool. And so it looked like they were kind of upgrading a bunch of games, sometimes maybe a bit unnecessarily. But I did like they were getting out of the kind of 8-bit blocky kind of stuff into a smoother graphic type of thing. So it looked like if they tap into the Atari catalog and some other catalogs as well, can do it. In addition to, they were doing the same reimagining with some classic Intellivision titles. I don't know, that caught my attention.
Yeah, were you an Intellivision guy at all for the original system?
Not really. Mild exposure to it, but not much. And then that had been kind of when, and it's probably I hadn't dug into this too much initially, but when I saw that, looking through the information, is that while it's carrying that forward, it's also kind of bringing a kind of interesting controller into play and some reimagining stuff, which I think is intriguing. I got a lot more interested. But you were a pretty big Intellivision guy, right?
Yeah, so an uncle of mine had one when I was a kid, so I did play it a little bit when I was younger. Then I got from Et Games, one of their early plug and play systems was an Intellivision plug and play. So I played a bunch of games on there, and then now you can easily get totally legal ROMs on a lot of different things, including Super Console X. that has an Intellivision section. So I am pretty familiar with a lot of the old Intellivision games. So when this was initially announced, I was kind of excited because I felt like, okay, they're doing something more than just, you know, a mini system or a plug and play kind of thing. Then the gameplay was okay. Like it seemed like it was mostly reimagined versions of old games, which is fine. But then I do think the price point seemed a little bit high for essentially what it was. And now we're a few delays in to this. I've seen a lot of people just very frustrated on social media talking about this, and particularly this new delay seems to be undated and also doesn't match. Like if you go on GameStop right now, you can still pre-order the Amico Intellivision with the old release date still listed on there, even though the company has announced that it's not going to meet that release date. And there doesn't seem to be a release date anymore for it. So I can see where people are kind of losing confidence in it at this point. The one thing I think that would keep me from it, because there could always be good games, and that's, you know, like we talked about with Atari VCS, like we're still kind of waiting to see what games come for it. There could always be good games for it, but I think where Intellivision is limiting themselves with this system, if you go on their website and read it, they are specifically intending this to be a very clean, family-friendly experience with no games that show any sort of violence. Has been their rule of thumb, and it's a thing that's dedicated on their website, like a pledge to that. That's kind of off-putting to me. I'm not saying you need like hardcore pornography based games like Kelly's used to, but but like I do want some kind of diversity. I do like action games and horror games and things like that we're clearly not going to get on this system. So for me, intentionally limiting the scope of your games like that is probably going to exclude me personally. And that's before you talk about the delays and things.
What was the original, or what's the price point that
I believe it's $250 for the standard system.
Okay. Yeah, that was, as like I said, I had not really done much looking at this at all until you brought it up. As I started to look at it, I didn't get down to price point. I was just kind of looking at capabilities, form factor, and all that. And I kind of go, this doesn't feel inexpensive at this point. I started looking at the controllers.
And that's the thing, like it looks great, like we talked about. So it's not that I feel like it wouldn't be worth $250, but then if you're pitching me just older games and nothing that's going to have more of an appealing edge to me. And the original Intellivision had some horror games and action games and things. So we're not going to get updated versions of those games.
Yeah. I mean, the other part that is interesting on it is that the controllers also have, they got the sensors in it so that you can actually like do bowling or play bags or those types of things with the controllers, and kind of Nintendo Wii like experience as well. So that's cool, but and it does come across, even in the limited research that I did, they are definitely, this is fun for the whole family. This is, everybody gets together in the living room. Let's go do this. It's the family game system. So this is great. Also, it'll accept cartridges. Is that?
Will it? That I had not
seen. That, well, it was in again, E3. So I don't, if they may have had bigger plans, but they did talk about, well, if you like that, it also can kind of do some old school things. So it does look pretty intriguing in terms of that, but it's also got to get to market. So yeah, that's the kind of a thing. So
yeah, it's had quite a few delays. We're more than a year past what the original release date was supposed to be at this point. And now, it's being delayed again with an undated release. And as we know, and as we've talked about on this show, things are getting more expensive. Shipping is getting more difficult. So it's not looking good if they weren't able to get this to market pre-pandemic.
Yeah. So it's not good from there. So we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, and you saw the same thing with the Atari VCS. Another parallel between these two systems is that it was just, but that was years. People were waiting for forever. And then finally, when they kind of pushed it out, it was with little fanfare at that point, because people had kind of just given up. I still think they got a little bit of room here before they run into that, but probably not too much longer. And the indefinite date's a bit of a flag. So yeah,
I feel like if they leave it undated for too long, it's going to be the same situation where there's not going to be too many people who are interested when it finally does surface.
Definitely.
But it's a shame they're sticking to that. And again, you brought up the Wii, which I think is interesting. So I don't know if it, so for anyone who doesn't know, when the Wii initially launched in incredibly small numbers, which has now become Nintendo's trademark of releasing things, not really an intentional thing on their part at that time, though, because Nintendo had actually gone through a few failed consoles at that point. So that was kind of like Nintendo at death's door when they released the Wii, because you had Virtual Boy, you had Nintendo 64, and I know Nintendo 64 is beloved, but it was smashed into the ground by every other console that came out at that time in terms of actual sales. And I love Nintendo 64 as well, but again, the reality of it, marketplace wise, it didn't have any place in the market. So Nintendo 64, Virtual Boy, and one of their handhelds didn't take off either. So they were in a bad, tight spot there. And even though that took off initially, it was mainly family games when it was initially launched, like bowling and Wii Sports and all that kind of stuff. So Nintendo actually launched in a bid to try and pull more serious gamers towards it so they can have more longevity. Once the system had already become a success, they launched the Wii Our Mature line, get it, Wii? Our Mature line, of specifically trying to pull mature rated titles over to the console so that they could get more serious gamers involved too. And I feel like without doing something like that, I don't know that Intellivision's going to have that same impact of pulling serious gamers over to this who are willing to put out a few $100s on equipment and things like that.
It's fair. Yep. Yep. We'll have to see, and we'll keep our eyes out. If we get an update and get a better sense of what's going on, we'll work it into a show and make sure to mention it to you folks.
Anything else you want to add, sir?
Not for the show, sir.
All right. Kelly's going to go back to playing his porn games. And thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for watching, everybody.